My 8-year-old daughter asked me a question that destroyed me. Then I spent 7 days as a beggar in Onitsha Market, and what I learned, no business school in the world could have taught me. My name is Emeka Okafor. Net worth? Over 500 billion naira. Private jet, mansion in Abuja, penthouse in Lagos, villa in Dubai I visited exactly once. But on a hot, dusty Wednesday morning in the heart of Onitsha Market, I sat on the concrete ground, wearing a torn agbada, a cracked plastic bowl in front of me, and nobody knew who I really was. And that was exactly the point. This is the story of Emeka Okafor, and what he discovered in those 7 days on the streets of Nigeria would change everything. Emeka Okafor did not inherit his wealth. He was born in a single room in Newi, the fourth of 6 children. His father repaired motorcycles for a living. His mother sold akara and pap by the roadside before sunrise every morning, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. They were not lazy people. They were simply people the system had never bothered to protect. Emeka watched his mother wake up at 4 a.m. his entire childhood. He swore he would never let that be the end of her story. At 19, he moved to Lagos with 3,000 naira and a second-hand Nokia phone. He started buying and reselling electronics at Computer Village. By 25, he had a small import business. By 32, he had taken it public. Today, Okafor Group, one of Nigeria's largest conglomerates in oil, logistics, and real estate, was valued at over 2 trillion naira. Forbes Africa had featured him 4 times. The president had personally called to congratulate him on his last acquisition. But inside the glass towers of Okafor Group headquarters in Victoria Island, his employees had a different word for him: Oga Terror. Emeka was ruthless. His Monday morning meetings were feared throughout the company. He had once reduced a finance director to tears in front of 30 people, not because the numbers were wrong, but because the font on the slide was unprofessional. He answered emails at midnight and expected replies by 6 a.m. He didn't see employees as human beings. He saw them as machinery that should not malfunction. And then, his daughter said something he could not unhear. Her name was Adiaze. She was 8 years old. One Sunday evening after church, the family sat for dinner. Jollof rice, fried plantain, and pepper soup the way only their cook could make it. The kind of meal that made you close your eyes for a moment before lifting your fork. Adiaze was quiet throughout the meal. Unusually quiet. Then she looked up at her father and said, "Daddy, do you know what it feels like to be hungry? Really hungry?" Emeka laughed. He told her he used to eat gari and groundnut 3 times a day, that he knew hunger better than she could imagine. But Adiaze shook her head slowly, with the unbothered confidence of a child who has not yet learned to be polite about the truth. She said, "That was when you were small. Now you have forgotten. I don't think you even see those people anymore." She pointed out the window at the gate, where, beyond the high fence and the security guard, the city continued its noise and chaos. Emeka did not respond. But he didn't sleep that night. He lay in the dark, and those words moved through him like a current. You don't even see those people anymore. By 2 in the morning, he had made a decision. He called his PA, cancelled every meeting for the next 7 days, told her it was a private health matter, no further details. Then he went to the back of his wardrobe, past the bespoke agbadas and Italian suits, and he found the oldest, most beaten-up clothes he still owned. He dressed in the dark, and he left. He took a commercial bus, Danfor, for the first time in over 20 years. The conductor shouted at him to move in. Someone's elbow was in his ribs. The bus smelled of sweat and engine fumes and the faint sweetness of someone's suya. He sat wedged between a market woman with 2 large bags of tomatoes and a young man sleeping upright with his mouth open. Emeka Okafor, whose personal driver navigated him through traffic in a bulletproof Mercedes, sat in silence and stared out a cracked window. He got off near Onitsha Main Market and found a corner by the roadside. He sat down and he waited. The first thing that struck him, the thing he was not prepared for, was the invisibility. Emeka Okafor, whose name opened doors in Abuja and Lagos and London, was suddenly nobody. People walked past him like he was part of the road. Market women haggled over prices inches from his head without glancing at him. A group of boys ran past and one of them nearly stepped on his hand. No apology, no acknowledgement, just nothing. By afternoon, the sun was punishing. He had no water. He approached a woman selling cold drinks from a cooler and explained he had no money. Could she spare 1 bottle? She looked at him up and down. "Oga, carry your wahala come here." She turned her back. Emeka stood there, a man who had once donated 200 million naira to a hospital in his hometown, a man senators lobbied for access to, a man whose PA had a PA. He walked back to his corner, sat down in the dust, and felt something crawl up from somewhere deep inside him that he had not felt since childhood. Humiliation. Over the next 6 days, Emeka met people he would never forget. Babatunde, a man in his 50s with a grey beard and kind eyes, who had spent 12 years working on a construction site before a scaffolding collapse left him with a damaged leg and no compensation, no NSITF payout, no justice, no nothing. Just a man who gave his body to someone else's project and been discarded when that body broke. Every night, Babatunde shared whatever food he had. The first time he handed Emeka a piece of ageje bread and groundnut, Emeka almost said, "I'm fine." Then he remembered he hadn't eaten since morning. He took the bread, said, "Eshi," and meant it in a way he had never meant a thank you before. Mama Ngozi was a woman who had been on those streets for 3 years after her husband died and left debts instead of a will. She had 4 children. She sold sachet water during the day and slept under a canopy she shared with 2 other women at night. Every Friday evening, without fail, she set aside a portion of her earnings, however small, and sent it to her eldest daughter's school fees. When Emeka asked how she managed, she laughed softly. "God is not sleeping, and my children will not suffer what I suffered. That is enough reason to stand up every day." And there was a boy called Chukwemeka, ironic given the name, maybe 13 or 14, who sat under a tree every afternoon doing schoolwork in a tattered notebook. He attended a public school nearby. His pencil was so short he held it between his fingers like a needle. One afternoon, Emeka noticed him watching him. He smiled and said, "Uncle, do you want to share my food?" He had a small wrap of rice in a black nylon bag. Emeka stared at him for a long moment. "Are you sure?" he asked. The boy shrugged. "You look hungry. Food is for eating, not for keeping." Emeka ate half the rice, and behind his sunglasses, the only thing he had refused to leave at home, he wept quietly. On the 7th day, Emeka went home. His wife met him at the door. She took one look at him, the sunken eyes, the dust on his clothes, something fundamentally different in the way he was standing, and she said nothing. She just held him. He showered for a long time. Then he sat at his desk in his study, and he stared at the wall. And he started to work, but differently. Within 60 days, Ofoko Group established the Nnewi Foundation, named after the town he was born, with an initial endowment of 5 billion naira. Its mandates? Vocational training for street youth, emergency support for injured workers abandoned by the system, and a scholarship fund specifically for children studying in underfunded public schools. He flew to Abuja and met personally with the Minister of Labour about the failure of injury compensation systems. He was not polite about it. He went back to his company and restructured it from the inside, beginning with the managers who had been ruling through fear. 3 of them were gone within the month. He started holding open door hours. Any employee could request 30 minutes with him, no agenda required. But the most important call he made was not to a minister or a board member. He tracked down Babatunde through the shelter where he sometimes stayed. He offered him a role, overseeing community liaison for Ofoko Group's new Lagos construction project. Real work, real pay, a pension, and health insurance. Babatunde sat very still when Emeka made the offer. Then he said, "Why me? You don't even know me." Emeka looked at him. "You gave me bread when you had almost nothing," he said. "In my company, I have people who earn 7 figures and would not give you the time of day. I know exactly who I want building things with me." Emeka Okafor is still a billionaire. He still flies private. He still negotiates deals that move markets. He still walks into rooms that most Nigerians will never enter. But something is permanently different about the man who came back from those 7 days. He sees people now. The security guard at the gate, the cleaner who comes in before sunrise, the small boy doing homework with a pencil stub under a tree. He sees them the way you can only see something after you have been it. His daughter Adaize asked him one evening, months later, if he had found his answer. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "You were right. I had forgotten, but I remembered." She nodded, the way children do when they always knew. "Good," she said. "Don't forget again."
Babatunde now has a small house. His daughter is in university. He still shares his food with strangers. Mama Ngozi's eldest daughter graduated top of her class. She is now studying law. Mama Ngozi still sells sachet water. But now she also mentors younger women on the street. The boy, Emeka found him. He is now on a full scholarship through the Iniwi Foundation. His pencil is no longer short. Emeka still walks past people on the street. We all do. But now, when he passes someone sitting on the ground, he stops. He sees them. He remembers.
What did this story make you feel? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And hit that subscribe button, because every time a story like this reaches one person who needed to hear it, something shifts. A little, quietly, but it shifts.